The Choral, 2025. This is set in Ramsden, which is in the north of England, probably Yorkshire, maybe Lancashire. It has a feel of the Calder Valley, which is the area I know best from up there. That's West Yorkshire. But I looked up Ramsden to see, and there's one in Orpington, South East London. There's Oxfordshire, Worcestershire, Essex, Canada, and the Moon. It's a crater there. They're all called Ramsden, but none in the north of England. So I guess that's a good fictitious town. The acting was fabulous, but the most prominent person is on my T list. That means I'm shadow banning them. I'm not mentioning anyone's name who participates in a particular project by a particular author because of the damage being caused, and it's such a shame. I mentioned about that in the last film review. It's going to keep happening every so often, but um, the only thing I think I can do of any value is um, not talk about them, however good they're acting. And there's a lot of other good acting by the other actors in this film. For a start, oh, there's Amara Okereke, who plays Mary, who starts off in the Salvation Army in a bonnet collecting, but then joins this choral society. She was excellent. I did check because she seemed to have an absolutely marvelous singing voice, but I gather from the titles at the end that someone else did the singing. So that's a pity, but even so, um, like many of the other people, I was just really blown away by the whole thing. I really was immersed, very captivated by the story. And it's narratives by Alan Bennett, and you can see his signature throughout, just certain quirky elements of humor, which I love. I remember from the Lady in the Van 2015, so 10 years on. This might be about the first Alan Bennett um, story I've seen on celluloid since then, but I really liked it. So I'm glad I didn't miss it altogether. Um, so, um, it's set in the middle of the First World War, the Great War as it was known back then. Um, there were the first people to go to the war were volunteers, but by 1916 there was talk of conscription, and the lads who were teenagers, say 17-year-olds, worrying about when they turn 18, getting effectively drafted into the war, getting their papers. The thing is, um, one mentions right early on that this is England, we're fodder for the mills and we're fodder for the war as well. And that really is heartbreaking to think about that generation. I mean, they were told this is an honor to be conscripted. I don't think people would um, now. There's talk that Generation Z would not be willing to fight for country. Really understand why. I mean, um, but just how things were, and especially the First World War, it wasn't like the Second World War with um, a particular fight against a right wing regime that was, dictatorial um, Nazis, that sort of thing. That was the Second World War. Feels more justifiable. The First World War, a lot more complicated. Fallouts, the whole thing about the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. I don't know. It's just awful. And I found the whole thing really poignant because I think of that time when the young people of that time, teenagers of that time, they were perhaps 10 to 15 years older than my paternal grandparents. Um, and unlike my paternal grandfather, oh no, my maternal grandfather, who fought in another war in 1940 and died. The whole thing, I mean, and there was so much that felt evocative of what my grandparents talked about that time, and about the photos, and about so much of when I was growing up and hearing about what things were like in the earlier 20th century. And this brings it to life. Lots of films do. I just do love seeing films from the first 70 odd years of the 20th century that I'm, yeah, I don't have any memories of, before the 70s. Um, just knowing about it well enough, having a history lesson through the big screen is one thing I really love. Um, so there's um, there's a fair few things. Elgar makes an appearance in this film. Now, one of the main characters is Guthrie, and he is recruited to be the head choral person. So the mill owner explains that they're all equal in there, apart from the choral master, and he comes in. He's um, the person everyone needs to answer to, and they don't actually. Um, a lot of people don't particularly like him at the start because he's spent time in Germany. There's big reluctance because he speaks German. There's embarrassment. They're worried. I mean, there's so much animosity to Germany. It's been whipped up. It's cultural, obviously, because they're at war with Germany. England was at that time, so you can understand why this is happening. And they're saying, um, "For heaven's sake, keep your voice down." I mean, please cut out the because he talks at German, and everyone's like muttering and gasping. Um, and there's all the social mores of those first um, years of the 20th century. Uh, there's things like a woman hands these teenagers a white feather because she believes that they should be all going off to war. And one explains that he will once he reaches 18, I guess he's 17, because it happens later on in the film. Um, like some of them, the older ones have been in war and, come back injured, and you see them being waved off on trains and come back on trains. And um, I'm reminded a bit of One Life 2023, but that's set in 1938, just as the Second World War approaches and everyone's escaping from Czechoslovakia. And I did a review about that, um, getting on for a couple of years ago. But this um, is um, it's set at an earlier time, but it's got that same feeling that people on trains and being waved off, all these young men, gosh, it's just so sad because another aspect of this film is, a young man on his official duties is handing out telegrams, and when he knocks on doors and a woman answers and he says, "Oh, I'm really sorry," as he hands over a telegram, it's because she's lost her husband. Gosh, one of them cried, and well, I found it so moving actually. The whole thing feels evocative. So, films like this really are, I think, very powerful. Really, I mean, there's a lot of other aspects to the film as well. There's a love triangle theme because someone who, um, I mean, there's a group of lads and they've just got single track minds the way young men do, and it's just like all they think about, it seems, is getting their underway, and it's just like, oh my gosh. And yet, I mean, they jump into this pond, and some of the women fancy them, and it's just like you see relationships develop. So there's elements like that in this film as well, and people who don't seem to, they're like, oh, it's hard to believe there's a war on, of course, because you're not actually in the war at that time, and it's not like the Second World War with aerial bombardment of towns. It's like they're getting on with this choral stuff, but the war is ruining stuff. That is explained in the trailer as well. There's the stress of it. Um, there's the themes which come up. There's a lot of objection to the themes of what Guthrie wants to do. He's adapting. He's not following to the letter what Elgar wrote. What was the play called? Gerontius, I think. Um, art comes from art. That's one thing that Guthrie says, um, and that's clear. And yet, there's a whole thing about people controlling their art, unless, and of course, there's you can get around that with loopholes, just the same as you can these days with monetization. If you don't monetize, I mean, uh, there's a lot to this film. I could talk a lot longer. Like the naivety of some of the young lads when they talk about going off to the war and thinking one says about having a half day off to go sightseeing. It's just like, I mean, how people think their expectations of what's going to be happening when they're at war. Oh my gosh. You know, it's all really understandable, but I think it's just amazing to see it. And I was just um, really drawn into the story. I really loved it. The singing is beautiful. Some of the singing is intentionally, you know, there's bad singing, of course, as well, because they are just an amateur choral um, organization, but some brilliant stuff. And it reminded me a little bit of Military Wives 20, was it 2019, 20, Military Wives 2020? Can't remember. Well, I knew it was just before the COVID pandemic shut down the cinemas. It was one of the late films. I'd like to review that at some point, but um, uh, uh, I think it's fab film. I'm going to reduce the marks slightly again because of the T-listed um, actor. Not much, I think, because although um, that person's fairly dominant in this film, there's a lot of other really good acting. So maybe drop it down from 9.25 to 9. Maybe, no, I'm just thinking, yeah, mm, I'm going to give it 8.75. I think that's a fair score for this film. Um, so, love to know what you think if you've seen this film. Um, I won't totally recommend it because of that T-listing thing, but um, I think there's a lot to commend it, and yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts. I've, um, Thanks for watching. Please like if you like this review. Um, Thanks if you subscribe. Please hit the notification button. I hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.